There we go. This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for your purpose, your power, your journey to authenticity. And I'm really excited about doing today's show, especially in conjunction with Cleveland 13, because one of my podcasts is now up for a Cleveland Award. And that means that we're being heard. And one of the things we take pride in is that we share real stories. And today's real story, it may hit you right in the gut, and you may say, could you bring me something a little cheerier? But I think if we listen to Pam, we're going to find out that even through dire straits, life can get better. And it's a choice we all have to make. So, Pam, take us on your journey, because I am one of many women who have spent a good portion of my life saying, is this all there is? What's wrong? Am I the only one who's unhappy? And then one day I woke up and I said, whoa, I can be happy. It's my choice. Tell us your story.
Oh, thank you, Karen. And may I say congratulations on the award. That's
Thank you.
brilliant news. Um, yes, well, where to start with my story? I suppose the easiest thing is to help people understand where I came from. I used to be a financial advisor. I had set up and was running my own company. And obviously, this is in the UK. And I'd managed to grow it into a multi-million pound company. So I was living the high life and I thought I was happy. Um, drinking champagne, changing my car, going on five-star holidays, that sort of stuff. And then I was catching a train from the city I was living in at the time into London. And on that journey, my train, which was a high-speed train, hit a train coming out of Paddington at over 130 miles per hour.
Oh my God.
And the carriage I was sitting in, which was the front carriage just behind the engine, the fuel tanks exploded and a fireball ripped through my carriage. Now, unfortunately, 31 people died in that fireball. I should have died. I should have been the 32nd. I was hit by the fireball, suffered severe burn injuries, and by the time I was taken to hospital, my family were told there was no way I was going to make it. But I'm a fairly stubborn little creature. I was in a coma for 3.5 weeks. And when I came out of that coma, I couldn't speak because my vocal cords had been burnt. I couldn't move because the burns were full thickness burns. So I'd lost all the skin to my face, my hands, my legs. I got some on my back. I'd lost all my hair. My scalp was burnt. This was part of the reason my family were told not to expect me to survive. Um, but I was lucky. I had a fantastic team in the hospital. I was very lucky with the surgeon that was allocated to me, and they helped pull me back from the edge. So I did survive, thankfully. But it was going to be a long road of recovery. The minute I woke up from the coma, the doctors were there almost straight away, and they warned me. They said, you will never fully recover. The injuries are too extensive. But with perseverance and hard work and your dedication over the next few years, you may get about 50% of what you had before.
Wow.
Now, obviously, while I was lying in this hospital bed, because I couldn't talk at all, it gave me a lot of time to observe as people were coming in and out to visit me. But it got me thinking. And I think it was at that point that I realized the life that I'd built beforehand, A, was gone there was no way I'd be returning to it. And B, it hadn't been worth it. It wasn't the life that I wanted to lead. Um, I don't know whether any of your listeners feel like this, but sometimes you get so trapped up in your work and making money and all that sort of stuff, you forget that life is about relationships and communication and your
Mhm.
family and your friends. And I was working so hard, I just never bothered with any of that. So I actually made a pact with myself in hospital that if I did survive and could recover, that I would never allow myself to be in that position ever again. Now, it took me 10 years to recover to the stage that I am at now. I'll never be 100%. However, I think I've done a pretty good job at, getting back as much as I can.
Sure,
And I've been realistic with it. I've drawn lines because the doctors actually wanted to continue operating on me. Um, and after 2 years of operations and then recovery and then more general anesthetic and so I turned around to them and said, no, that's enough. I've had enough. I need to now start looking to rebuild, to work out
sure,
how I'm going to be in the future and what I can do. So I pulled away from the medical side, but in the meantime, I discovered about why the train crash had happened, which unfortunately came down to government and it came down to the rail industry themselves at the time and putting profits before human lives.
sure.
They're taking shortcuts with some of the safety features, which have caused our crash and also caused the fireball. So I decided I can't let this happen to somebody else again in the future. So I don't know where I got it from. I mean, I needed a lot of help. My sister actually became my hands, if you like. So she did the stuff for me, but I was like the director in a hospital bed telling people what to do. And I said to them, first of all, I tried to reach out to other survivors from the train crash. And then as time went on and we discovered why it had happened and what had happened and what the government and industry had been up to, we banded together and I set up a group. And that survivors group went on to challenge both the government and the rail industry publicly through the media. And we took them to task. We followed the inquiry. We found out the improvements that were recommended from that. And then we made sure that the government implemented them. And it took me by surprise when I look back, because I'm just a normal person. Nobody told me, oh, by the way, you can take on a government or you can take on these big boys. Um, but I'm a great believer in you may as well have a go because it's better to have tried and failed than it is just to sit back and say, oh, well, there's nothing I can do. And
Exactly.
as it happens, it worked. And now the UK has one of the safest railway systems in Europe. And I'd like to think I sort of sit there with a bit of pride and think I had a little bit of something
Oh,
to do
absolutely.
with that.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what I'm finding interesting is that sadly, it takes often some sort of tragedy of some sort, of some magnitude, to get us to open up and say, hey, my life has more meaning than this. Let me do something that I can wake up in the morning and feel proud of.
Yeah,
And, you know, I too was in corporate America and I was making good money. I was on the road to what some people would call more success. Um, I was more of the breadwinner than my husband, and I was miserable. And I knew I was miserable, but I loved what I did. But it was the culture that was killing me. And so, no matter how hard I worked at helping other people, I was destroying myself and destroying my relationships. So I understand where you're coming from, that when you finally, you know, had this aha moment, I'm probably not going to go back to doing what I was doing. And you know what? That wasn't working for me, anyways. Um, Sometimes we have to take that step back before the tragedy happens in our life to really appreciate life. So I'm sure this has not been easy for you because number one, your body had to heal, your brain had to heal because don't you still sometimes feel that accident happening over and over again? Because it is traumatic.
Yeah, I do have post-traumatic stress disorder. And unfortunately, because it wasn't treated at the time, it was 2 years before it was diagnosed. I've now got it chronically, which means I live with it.
Yeah.
But I've learned to, I mean, yes, PTSD, I have episodes and I can't do anything. I can't function. I can't wash. I can't eat. But it sort of knocks me out for a week. And then, oh, what I have discovered with PTSD is I used to fight it. And when I fought it, it was worse and it lasted longer. And it was, I was lucky enough to have a really good psychiatrist. And it was he that taught me it's actually a curse of the strong is that you fight things. But if you can give in to it, it'll pass quicker. And he was absolutely right. So now I treat it a bit like having flu. So I'll just shut my curtains, shut down, stay at home. I actually curl up in a duvet and I'm basically in my pajamas. Um, and it passes after a week. Now, my family, and this happens about twice a year now, and my family have always been still, fairly upset that I'm still going through this. But the way I've explained it to them is okay, there's 52 weeks in a year. I'm knocked out for 2 weeks of a year. That gives me 50 weeks when I can be cracking on, doing what I enjoy, and doing all these exciting little projects that I've got on the go now.
What a wonderful way to look at life. And sadly, we don't, because too often we look at those 2 weeks as being our identity. And the reality of it is, it could be 2 weeks of anything that is different. So, bravo to you for understanding that. Um, it's like any kind of grief that we go through. Grief just pops into our head.
Hmm.
Grief is PTSD, and it shows up when we're not expecting it. And yet, you're right. If we can sort of go with it, okay, I need this downtime. I'm going to curl up in a ball, and it's okay because it's going to go away. I'm
Yeah,
going to move on. It's the person who gives into it and doesn't look beyond it. And so you were able to do that, luckily, with a good therapist
yeah.
who could guide you there. And so that's another key to recovery is finding the right people to be in your corner, the right doctors, the right therapists,
Yeah.
even the right friends and family.
I mean, to be sure, I went through 5 psychiatrists before I settled on one that I felt helped me. And that wasn't because they were bad. It was just they didn't suit my personality. Particularly the ones that wanted me to keep continually going over the train crash in detail. And one of them said, "But you have to cry." And I said, "Well, I'm not a crier. I'd rather look to the future, and work out how am I going to live in the
Yeah.
future." And eventually I did find one that very much, followed the same principle. And he said, "Where do you want to go to?" And I went, "You're the guy for me." That's definitely the sort of phraseology.
Absolutely. It's interesting you talk about not being a crier. Um, I lost my husband suddenly at the beginning of the year.
Oh, I'm
And,
sorry.
thank you. And because the two of us were so close and we talked and we knew what each of us wanted when our end came close, I was more in shock than anything else. I still have not cried.
Oh,
But I met with the therapist who really like, Karen, that's terrible. You're holding your tears back. And I said, no, I'm not. I feel absolutely. I feel the loss. I feel the sadness. I said, but I don't need to cry. I
mm,
said, I was a crier my younger life. I cried over anything and everything. Um, I could watch a bird fly and think it was going away, and I could just bawl my eyes out. I said, so I think I've cried out all those tears. It's not about the crying, it's about understanding whatever that loss is. You had a loss when you were in the accident. Um, you weren't yourself, at least the person who you thought you were.
no.
Um, and I'm sure your family went through the same thing. And so you had to deal with their loss as much as yours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think with PTSD, I've always said it doesn't just affect the person that's direct.
We froze. We were hoping that we wouldn't freeze everybody, but the system has frozen. So we're going to hope that Pam comes back. And she was having trouble with her internet, and we're not sure if it's going to resolve. So just give us a second while we sit here and pause. Okay, so as you all know, the internet can be a little wobbly at times, and especially when you're going over a very large body of water, called the Atlantic Ocean. Um, so, just so that you know, Pam is back with us, and she was talking about how PTSD not only affects her, but the family and the people around her. So, what are some of the strategies you use, Pam, to get on with your day?
Right. Well, I mean, after the 10 years, I was actually, I remember being sat in my living room going, now what do I do? Because the campaigning was over. I'd achieved what I wanted to achieve with the rail safety, but I didn't know what I would be good for. And I sat there and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a CV that's got this 10-year gap in it. I don't know what to do. Plus, I've been used to running my own business. Am I even employable? There was all these self-doubts about who I was and what I could do. And it was actually a very good friend of mine. She came over and we didn't use online. Do you remember the old flip charts with the coloured pens and stuff? We sat with one of those and she kept on asking me questions. So she asked me questions about um, my time in hospital and my recovery and the operations, because she'd lived through all of that with me. But she also asked me about the campaigning and the dealing with politicians and the negotiations I had to do with various parties to achieve what we did achieve. And as I spoke, she was scribbling and she was using different colored pens. And eventually she stopped and made me stand back and read this flip chart. And I went, oh my gosh, there was so many skills. They were different from me being a financial advisor, but they were skills nonetheless.
Right.
And I thought to myself, okay, that's fabulous because now I feel a bit more confident. It helped me think I actually do have something to offer. But then it came down to breaking away from, I call it the conditioning. When we're born, we're brought up a certain way, and society, I'm not saying family here, I'm saying society expects us to behave a certain way and follow a certain path. And that's what had happened to me prior to the train crash. Now I was almost being given a clean slate. So I thought, okay, well, rather than going back into an occupation where that's it and it's 9 to 5 or, 5, 6, 7 days a week, I'd rather do lots of little things with variety. So from the skills, I worked out I'm quite a creative person. So uh, something a bit more, yeah, to enhance that side of myself. And I don't mean art. I'm not an arty person. But I need things where I can look at a problem, but then go, okay, how can we be creative about this? And let's use our imagination about how to solve these things. I'm still a problem solver. Um, and then another side was going, well, having lived through what I've lived through, I want to be able to give back. So, but I don't want to do that money. So I then thought, well, helping out charities because they're slightly different. So I'm now an ambassador for a charity, a large burns charity. But I'm now, I've just started work as a case worker for um, something over here called SAFA, which is the Armed Forces charity, because there are people within that who have PTSD. So that keeps that side content as well. But I'm now, I mean, at this current point in time, while I'm talking to you, I've got 12 different projects underway,
I love it.
including some where it's just community stuff for my local village, because I now live in the north of Wales, up in the mountains. And I'm in a very small village, and they were looking for volunteers. So I volunteered to help out at the village hall. So I do a bit of that as well. And the other reason I moved away from the city into the countryside is I love going for a long walk. I find it gives me that balance to be in the mountains and to be able to walk off almost straight out of my house and just disappear for an hour or two and then come back. And it helps you not just commune. I don't mean I'm communing with nature, but I feel at peace.
Sure.
And I'm sure you would understand that it makes you feel reconnected with nature and natural things rather than being stuck in front of a computer.
Oh, absolutely. It's interesting. The condo that I live in is right on the edge of one of our national parks here in Ohio. And when my husband and I picked this place, we picked it because neither one of us were really outdoors people, but being able to observe the outdoors, even from indoors, just made us feel very, very good. And I found after he passed away in the dark of winter with all the snow in the back, and I hate winter. I have to preface this, I really do. But I went out in my yard, which is right up against the park, and I felt clear, totally different than what I felt in the house. But I could walk outside, walk in the snow, and now I walk in the grass, and it's it's refreshing. And
Yeah,
yet,
and energizing. Don't you
you
find
know,
it energizing?
so I don't consider myself an outdoor person. It's not like I'm out there hiking and doing a lot of things, but even just going outside, walking around for a few minutes, breathing in the air. I sit at my dining room window and I watch the little animals that run around, and it's enlightening. Um, One of the things I think so many of us forget, and you're right, I think it has to do with how we're brought up in community, is we're given all these things that we're supposed to do in our life. You go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you work 9 to 5, on and on and on. And we take all this on and we forget how to live. And I was in a wonderful marriage, but when I turned 60, I turned to my husband and I said to him, I love you, but I don't like you right now. And he looked at me like, and I said, but I don't like me. I don't like anything. And it was the truth. I was going to work and I was so unhappy, but I had no idea what it was until I finally had to take the break from work. When I took the break from work, I realized it was the culture. It wasn't the people my students I was working with were wonderful. If I could have gotten rid of management, I would still be there today. Um, and when I realized that, like you, I have to have some talent here that I can do something else with. What
Yeah.
can I do? And I didn't have a friend who sat down with me. I did it myself. I sat down at the computer and I started putting in every job I've ever had, the different talents I used, my education. And finally, I just looked at the screen and said, I think I know what I want to do. And I went downstairs and found my husband. This was over 15 years ago. And I said, I want to do a podcast. And he looked at me and goes, what do you know about a podcast? I said, nothing. And that's why I want to do it. In the first year or so, I just talked to whoever was out there on the internet.
Hmm.
I didn't even have a website initially. It was just, I was putting it out there. And then I realized I want to do more with this. And so I started doing the research. I started finding individuals like yourself who, by the grace of God, you have found a way to make living worthwhile. We all need to learn how to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things when you invited me, one of the things that particularly drew me to your podcast was that word authenticity, because it really resonated about because I find that life becomes much simpler when you stop trying to be who other people expect you to be.
Right.
And that to me is effectively the definition of authenticity, don't you feel?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny you should say that because somebody that I've been working with a couple days ago um, had disappointed me. And I understood why I had been disappointed, but that person sort of like turned it around on me, well, because of this, this, and this, these are the reasons this didn't happen. And I initially took that as, oh, I can't handle this. I'm not going to work with this person again. And then I thought about it and it was like, no, I understand. And I understand what I need to do to change me because I wasn't being really true to myself or to that person. And I think that's the point that so many of us miss, that we take somebody else's words and we take it as being who we are. And the reality of it is we have to just look in the mirror and know,
Yeah.
and if somebody doesn't like us, that's okay because we don't like everybody. Doesn't
No,
mean
it's not
we have
possible.
yeah, we certainly can try, but it's not going to work. And that's okay because just because you don't like someone isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
You just don't have to be mean to that person. So, how do you truly help individuals? Because obviously, you have all these different projects. Some of them are helping others like yourself. So, give us a hint.
Well, I suppose because I eventually, accidentally, by the way, um, became a professional speaker. Um, and companies particularly wanted to hire me to talk about the train crash. And I must admit, after the first year or so, I was going, I've had enough of talking about the train crash now. Again, that forward looking, I want to look towards forward. Um, so now I changed everything. So now I talk about how you can almost make yourself resilient, so resilient that you can cope with any change that could possibly hit you. Um, I find that because of my experiences, I adapt really quickly to any sort of change, even to the point where if my life is getting a bit boring or stayed, I'll actually chuck a mini grenade in just to see what happens and then see what needs to be changed. But I think bearing in mind the whole world went through COVID 6 years ago. So in a way, everybody on this planet has got some form of PTSD after that. And we've had to deal with incremental change that is just gathering pace and pace and pace and pace and pace and pace. And we don't always have to understand all of the change, but what we do need to do is adapt really quickly to it so that we're almost ducking and diving all the time. And that's actually quite exciting. So that's what I turned my talking to people. And what I love now is when I've got an audience in front of me, I deliberately look at the faces and I'm concentrating on some eyes and you can see the spark going off in those eyes and the thrill that gives me every time I see it because I'm sort of sat thinking, okay, you don't need to go through the trauma that I went through, but you've got it. Something now has sparked you. And I really genuinely, I mean, I've heard back from a few people in the past who said they changed direction completely, which
Sure.
is one of the best bits of news I've ever heard. So yeah, I'd like to still think I'm making a little bit of a difference in my own little way, but oh, I can't tell you the joy I get every time I see that spark in somebody's eyes.
It's interesting because when I first started podcasting, a friend of mine said, "Why would anybody want to listen to you?" And my comment was, maybe they don't. But if one person listens, then I have something to share. And I said, and I'm not telling anybody else how to live their life. I'm just sharing the experiences. And with each experience comes another experience. So, my talk has really grown over the years. And recently she said to me, "I'm really proud of you." And I
Oh,
said, "Well, thank you." And I had no idea that she had followed any of my podcasts, any of my writing. I thought she was just doing a like every time just to be nice to me. And I said, "Well, thank you." And she goes, "No, because you've taken me out of a very deep, dark place that I was in." I had no idea she'd been there. She had not shared it. And so we finally talked about it.
oh,
I said, now I understand you. For the last 15 years, I've wondered where my friend went. Now I know.
oh, mhm.
Goes, I never thought about sharing it. That's why I do this. When you share your story, now I've never been on in a train accident. I've never been in a fire, but I've been in accidents. I've
Yeah.
seen things explode around me. And so I listen to what you've gone through and realize if you went through that and you survived, what is it that I can do differently to survive? So you are sharing, you are making an impact, and you're living your life fully, which is
And
tremendous.
life, and we've got to admit, I mean, you and I know life is so goddamn exciting.
Yes, it is.
And when you can find your way through the rubbish that's all around and the stuff that keeps getting chucked at you by the universe, um, it is technicolor and
It,
it is beautiful and it is worth fighting for. Every single one of us should be fighting for it.
absolutely. So, how can my listeners find you, learn more about you, and um, if they really want to know more about the train situation and how you resolve things, I'm sure there are people out there going, how did she fight government?
Well, the best way to connect with me is through my website, which is quite simply Pam Warren, all one word, .co.uk. If you look in the book section, there is the book which you can buy if you wish to. There's an ebook there as well. But I've also written some other shorter books which I offer for free. So they're on there, and it's about, finding your resilience or finding your purpose in life. And it sort of amalgamates what I've learned through my recovery into, what anyone could, that it's actual practical steps that
Okay.
anyone can do. Because I know that some people don't like to just think about, oh, sounds all a bit airy fairy to me. I actually give them the formula as, okay, do this step, do that. Because what I did find, which I really want to get across to your audience, is you don't need all the answers immediately. You take things in very small steps, but you'd be surprised how many of those little tiny steps, and you look back and you've come a whole country.
Yep. Absolutely. I love that theory because, as I've been going through my grief journey, last week I was talking to my one of my coaches, and I said, I've fallen off the path. I don't like where I am. And she looked at me and she goes, Karen, it's 12 weeks. Look at all the steps you've taken. Okay, so you're stuck. It's okay because that's life. And as
Yep.
soon as she said it that way, it wasn't necessarily my grief, it was life. Life has me stuck right now. Okay. Um, do I need to curl up in bed? Do I need to go for a walk? What is it I need to do? And um, initially, it was I was going to do nothing, and I just, in fact, we sat there staring at each other on the screen, saying nothing for about 10 minutes,
Hmm.
and I realized that's okay. That is okay, and that's when I started to pivot. Now I know what I need to do for now. Am I going to fall again? Absolutely.
Hmm.
That that is life. And you know what? When we don't fall, we don't learn where our strength really is. Because when you get back up is when you find your strength. So I am so pleased to have met you. We're going to have all your information in the show notes so our listeners can find you. And
Thank you.
I think it is wonderful that you are living in a small little village. And if any of us get to Wales, we got to come look for you. In fact,
Yes, absolutely.
I have some friends that I was with the other night, and they said they're planning a trip to Wales. And I thought, Wales, why? And they just said, oh, it's beautiful. It's just a place just to go and wander. And I thought, never thought of it. But now I have a reason I can come visit you.
Oh yeah, let me know if you're coming over for sure.
I certainly will. Again, thank you for joining me today and
My pleasure.
be well. Thank you. Bye bye.
And you, Karen. Bye.